So I've got Jaffar Hasnain with me, and he's been on A News initially, and then you
Yeah.
have been on TRT World for the past few years. And as part of your journalistic work for TRT, you've recently been to Syria. You've just returned back to Istanbul, and I have been
Mm-hmm.
watching a lot of your coverage via your Instagram stories regarding a visit to Raqqa. Was it right? Northern Syria. You've been to Raqqa.
Northern Syria, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just need an update. What's been going on in Syria? What have you witnessed?
So I think we just need to give some context to our audience first. So Syria, after it was liberated from the Assad regime and taken over by Al-Sharaa, who is the president of the country now, at the time the country was divided into mainly two parts. Of course, there was Damascus, southern Syria, which was in control of Al-Sharaa. But northern Syria, it remained under the control of
The
the
SDF,
so-called SDF,
Syrian
which is
Democratic
basically
Forces.
the
Yeah.
correct, but which is basically the YPG, which is basically the PKK, an outlawed terrorist organization, recognized as a terrorist organization not just by Turkey but also by the United States and the European Union. So anyway, so for the past 1 year, heavy negotiations were taking place between Damascus and the SDF. In fact, they also signed an agreement in March of 2025 saying that the SDF would be integrating into the Syrian army. But what we saw happen, the SDF kept delaying the implementation of that deal, citing internal consultations. And I think that led to a lot of frustration within Damascus and also the mediators which were trying to, finalize this deal. And when I say mediators, I think even the US and many other stakeholders were frustrated with how the SDF kept delaying the implementation of the deal. Anyway, so I think all of this reached a tipping point about a few weeks ago because, people became lost in terms of how are we going to unite this country, because
Right.
the northern part is controlled by a
SDF.
non-state actor, which of course is basically the PKK. And so I think people were not able to, when I say people, stakeholders were not able to find a way out. So then I think Damascus decided they have to do something about it. Since these guys are not negotiating with us, they're not abiding by the agreements that they have signed. First, they conducted a targeted operation in Sheikh Maqsood and Al-Shrafiya neighborhood, which are basically part of Aleppo. So, it's interesting. Aleppo was basically under control of Damascus, Ahmad al-Sharaa, okay?
Yeah.
But there were certain neighborhoods within Aleppo which were under control of the SDF, and it has been the case since the fall of the Assad regime, of course, up until late December, early January.
Right.
So what happened after that, they conducted that operation, and then SDF forces, they withdrew from that region. And then I think that gave a lot of momentum to Damascus. So they were also able to, sign agreements with the SDF, which basically led to the voluntarily withdrawal of SDF from places like Raqqa and some other parts in northern Syria. And what's interesting about those regions are basically Arab majority regions. Okay?
All right.
So it was easier for Damascus to push SDF out from those regions. But there are still three regions which have a Kurdish majority, namely Hasake, Ain al-Arab, which is also called Kobani, and then Kamishli. Now, these three cities are known as, the most important cities for the SDF. So this is where things got stuck over the past few weeks. Ahmad al-Sharaa held multiple meetings with the delegation of the SDF. We saw major stakeholders get involved into this as well. The United States was involved in mediating talks. Then eventually they reached an agreement which basically said that the SDF would also be withdrawing from Kamishli, Ain al-Arab, and al-Hasake. But there were some complexities involved in the agreement in the sense that they would not be joining the Syrian army as a brigade, but rather on an individual basis. And the governor of those cities would be from the SDF, and the security would be taken care of by the governorate of Aleppo, the security chief there. So eventually we saw, I would say, partial implementation of that latest agreement. the internal security forces of Damascus, they entered Haseke and some other areas which were included in that agreement. Of course, the anticipation at the time was that there going to be some sort of rebuttal, some sort of harsh response from the SDF once the internal security forces enter. Basically what happened, things did not go as they were supposed to. There were some skirmishes, some clashes. The SDF did not welcome the internal security forces the way they were supposed to. In fact, they had been, spreading this propaganda against Damascus and its forces for quite some time now, and that, of course, led to this frustration, even among the people who live in those cities. I think the response was divided. There were some people who were open to welcoming the internal security forces. Then there were people who were opposed. They were saying, we're going to take to the streets. We don't want these people in our cities. But anyway, I think the SDF was under a lot of pressure and they had to implement this deal. So now it appears that the deal is progressing, not the way it should be, but there is some progress. But I think in terms of a full implementation of this deal, I think we'll have to wait for maybe 2 or 3 more weeks, because right now there's a lot of uncertainty. And the thing is, the SDF, which I would like to remind our audience again, the SDF is basically the YPG, and the YPG is basically the PKK. And Muneeb, I think a lot of people do not know about this, this thing when it comes to the PKK, YPG, SDF. So I think allow me to play this video from a Senate hearing that took place, I think, close to about 10 years ago or so.
Right.
At the time, the U.S. Defense Secretary was Defense Secretary Carter, and he's being asked questions by Lindsey Graham.
Right.
We see Lindsey Graham a lot lately. He has been, talking about what's happening in Northern Syria, and he has been using this word, the Kurds. We have to help the Kurds. They helped us in the fight against ISIS, terrorist organization.
Carter, have you ever heard of the PYD?
I have, yes.
Who are they?
They're a Kurdish group, one of several.
Have you heard of the YPG?
I've heard of them also.
Who are they?
Another Kurdish group.
Aren't they the military wing of the PYD?
They are, yes.
Is that right, General Giuffre?
That is correct.
They're a leftist Syrian Kurdish political party founded in 2003. Reports indicate that they're aligned or at least have substantial ties to the PKK. Is that true?
Yes, we haven't.
Is the PKK a terrorist organization in the eyes of the Turkish government?
The PKK is a terrorist organization not only in the eyes of the Turkish government, but in the eyes of the U.S. government as well.
Is it surprising to you that the Turks may be upset with us by arming the YPG in Syria, since they're so closely aligned with the PKK?
So, Lindsey Graham, he agrees with the Turkish government at the time that, it was a dumb idea to arm a terrorist organization to fight another terrorist organization. Right. But see the argument that some within the U.S. administration gave at the time that, no, it's not the YPG, it's not the PYD, it's not the PKK, it's something called the SDF, which is something entirely new. It led to a lot of...
in the Western media, do they not say that the Kurds are an extremely persecuted community, and they've been persecuted for years? And so when...
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how does one criticize these militant organizations, whether they come by with the name of YPG or PKK or SDF, on the one hand, and the persecuted Kurdish communities? How does one ensure that, these are not blurred, the lines are not blurred?
Okay, here's the thing. See, the way Western media covers this region, they always equate the SDF, YPG with the Kurds. I think that's disrespectful to the Kurdish community. I've spoken to a lot of Kurds in Northern Syria and many different parts. They don't want to be equated to the YPG, SDF. But when you look at Western media coverage of this region, they would always tell you, oh, Kurdish fighters, Kurdish this, Kurdish that. No, people, do not label them as Kurds. A terrorist organization has nothing to do with an ethnicity. I think we really need to stop doing that. And I don't know when Western media is going to learn to stop equating ethnicity or religion with a terrorist organization, because They have been doing this not just when it comes to the Kurdish people, but I think the entirety of Global South.
You know, in 2000, post 2014, particularly towards 2016, and this was around the same
Mhm.
time that the PKK tried to launch a coup against President Erdogan in Turkey, or Turkey, should I say. So around the
Mhm.
same time, the US had armed the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces, the Kurdish organization, had they not, in order to provide a
So
countervailing force
that
to
coup was
ISIS.
basically, that coup was, of course, PKK had a role in it, but it was essentially launched by the FETÖ terrorist organization, and its ringleader was living in Pennsylvania at the time. So basically, FETÖ had infiltrated some state institutions within Turkey at the time, and he was the main mastermind. And of course, at the time, there were substantial ties in terms of planning and everything with the PKK as well, because
Right.
FETÖ and PKK essentially wanted the government out. They wanted to install someone who favors their terrorist ideology, and they couldn't succeed in that. So I think the U.S. Of course, the U.S. The way it handled the whole crisis at the time led to a lot of frustration within Ankara. But I think right now, when you look at the relationship between the two countries, it has gotten a lot better because people are listening, especially when it comes to the relationship between Washington and Ankara.
Yeah.
The stakeholders have understood that the PKK cannot in any way, shape, or form be allowed to operate in this region,
But then, yeah,
especially at
that's the
the
point.
border.
So Turkey or
Mhm.
Turkey or
Yeah,
Ankara, they view SDF
yeah.
basically as PKK. That's what they see them as. And we know that when ISIS had overtaken the Syrian region
Mhm.
after
Mhm.
2014, that is exactly when the US believed that SDF could provide a countervailing force to ISIS in the region, and that's when they financed the SDF, and that's when they supported the SDF, and that is exactly when the SDF also engaged in a battle with Bashar al-Assad, Al-Shara's predecessor. Now, it
Mhm.
is being said, at least by the legacy Western media, that it's only because Donald Trump has started building bridges with the current Syrian president Al-Sharaa, who was previously a member of the proscribed terrorist organization HTS. It's only because of
Mhm.
that increasing proximity between Donald Trump and Al-Sharaa that
Mhm.
now Donald Trump and the US at large, they've withdrawn their support from
Yeah.
SDF, and that explains the downfall of SDF. So much so that it's also been reported that just today I was seeing that a convoy has entered into the town of Kamishli, which you talked about, and they've now also
Mhm.
overtaken. Damascus has overtaken Kamishli away from SDF. So, do you think that these changing dynamics of the relationship between the incumbent, the current president of Syria, and Donald Trump, and the growing proximity helps explain the downfall of SDF?
I think it does in some ways, but I think we have to take into account that this whole SDF thing was a lie to begin with. The SDF was always the PKK.
Right.
So I think this was a strategic mistake by the United States at the time to arm the PKK. And this is something that a lot of people in the West do not know because you rarely see these videos being highlighted. Lindsey Graham,
Yeah.
when he was in the Senate hearing with Defense Secretary Carter, Carter basically corroborated that the YPG is the PKK. PKK is a terrorist organization in the eyes of the U.S. government, the European Union, Turkey.
So, would you say
Then you
that the
have
US has
this.
straightened up its
Yeah,
act with regards to vis-a-vis
absolutely. I
so-called
think
SDF?
that's the right answer. Absolutely, 100%. The U.S. has finally understood. I made a mistake. I need to rectify it now. I can't keep putting Turkey at risk because, of course, this the PKK is located right at the Turkish border. I mean,
Right.
for example, the city of Kamishli, or
Right.
the
Right.
city of Ain al Arab, which the Kurds call Kobani,
Right.
they're right at the Turkish border. Turkey cannot allow a terrorist entity which is after its people. The PKK has killed tens of thousands of people since it launched its terror campaign. I mean, no government would allow
All
that.
right. And do you believe that the so-called ceasefire, which has recently been agreed between Al-Sharaa, between Damascus and the so-called SDF, Do you think that this came about because of the recent escape of a lot of ISIS terrorists from a detention facility which came under the SDF's control? Do you think that was the immediate trigger which opened the way, which paved the way for the Syrian regime, for the Syrian government to take over, Syrian military to take over northern Syria away from SDF?
I don't think it's because of that.
All right.
Because see, those ISIS detainees, they were captured again with the help of the United States, because the government, Damascus and the US, they launched an operation immediately after some of them, escaped from prisons, and I think they were able to capture all of them now. I think a lot of it, when it comes to the ceasefire, a lot of it has to do with the fact that no one is supporting the PKK anymore. They don't have any support from any stakeholders.
So finally,
Donald Trump has realized that Washington made a mistake. We need to stop supporting these guys. All European countries have realized, maybe not on television. On television, you might hear a different rhetoric, but I think on papers, when they meet behind closed doors, they have realized that it was wrong.
So I believe,
and that's why they have pulled all their support. So the PKK, it's a terrorist organization. It cannot thrive without support and finances coming from the West. And Muneeb, I've been to tunnels, PKK.
Yeah, just tell me more about that, because I found that very interesting. I saw that
in the
story.
It was a surreal experience in the sense that the tunnel that we went to, I went to multiple tunnels, but I want to talk about this one tunnel that's located very close to Ain al-Arab, Kobani. It's in a town called Syrian, located under a mountain. And let me tell you, Muneeb, I've never seen something like this before in my life. So when my fixer told me that they have discovered a PKK YPG SDF tunnel in northern Syria, first, we were debating whether or not it's safe for us to go inside, because the fixer told us that there's only one road which is relatively safer. The others are heavily mined. Plus, the tunnel has been discovered recently. It's a 3-story multi-level tunnel located inside a mountain. The first floor has a weapons depot. The second floor has a library, kitchen, and the third one has classrooms and dining hall. So, it's huge. And even there could be, booby trap bombs inside. So, we decided, okay, let's take a risk, because I think it's an important story in the sense that people really need to understand what the YPG PKK SDF were doing underground in Syria, how they were operating. So we decided to go. And the moment I entered, I remember telling myself, this place is not safe at all, because it's a tunnel inside a mountain, and the moment you close your flashlight, you can't even see a person standing next to you. That's how dark it was. And then there are stairs that take you to the first level, the second level, the third level. And as soon as I entered the second level, I saw this huge library of books with pictures of the ringleader of the PKK, Abdullah Öcalan, promoting his terrorist ideology. And one thing I remember telling myself, how the hell did they get the money to build something like this? Because it was not something mediocre. It was something very advanced in the sense that they had all the equipment, proper shelves, proper kitchen facilities, proper gym facility. There was also a gym, by the way. Proper gym facilities, latest ammunition, RPG.
They had US backing, so that's where the finances were coming from.
That's the thing. Is the US going to ask them, what the hell were you doing with my money? You were building tunnels.
But what do you think PKK's agenda is at large? Because we do call them terrorists and everything, but even a terrorist organization has an ideology or a larger aim. So what was the larger aim?
Mm-hmm. I think the whole agenda of the PKK right now is to terrorize the region by creating animosity against the Turkish state and also against the Syrian Arab Republic, and I think they're trying to gather support, especially from the West, when it comes to their vile agenda. But now I don't think that can happen, because the West has learned its lesson. It understands that YPG, SDF, PKK, they're all the same thing. We can't be supporting this, because see, in the end, they have to make a choice. They're either with Turkey or with the PKK. They can't be with both.
And then do you
Turkey
think
is a NATO member.
That help explains why just before Oman, it was supposed to be Ankara, where the US and Iran talks were going to take place just a while ago. Do you think that that means that Turkey is very much at the center of US's, global policies? It's become a very important partner because Turkey also feels vindicated now that the US administration has lent it a listening ear. So do you think that this symbolizes a sort of a thawing on relations, Turkey's relations, particularly with America? You think that this is what it symbolizes?
I think the place does not matter a lot when it comes to this meeting.
Right.
What matters is which country is engaging in diplomacy.
Yeah.
And I think Turkey is at the forefront here because, we heard the Turkish president on multiple occasions highlight that they have been trying to foster peace between the United States and Iran. The Iranian foreign minister was here, and they have said repeatedly that they don't want to see war in the region. And I think that the U.S. and Iran, they both understand that Turkey can play a very important role. That's why I think they allowed Turkey to, be this
Mediator, I believe.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in terms of the place, I think, I don't know why exactly it was moved because, yeah, you're right that there was a lot of anticipation that the meeting is going to take place in Istanbul. In fact, Istanbul, where I am, on Friday, but then it was moved to Oman. But this could be due to a lot of reasons. See, you have to understand, the US and Iran had been communicating through their diplomatic channels through Oman. Okay?
Right.
Even during the standoff between Israel and Iran in 2025, correct? Right. So Oman was the main diplomatic hub at the time. That country was basically communicating what Iran was saying to the United States. But so I think that could be one of the reasons why they chose Oman over Turkey, especially given the fact that the diplomatic communication between the US and Iran had been taking place through Oman throughout this time. So I don't particularly see any other reason for that. And as far as them choosing Oman over Turkey, I think it's basically because of what I just told you.
Strategic
reasons. There's nothing. There's nothing beyond that. No.
All right.
I don't think. I don't think the U.S. said no. We shouldn't be doing it in Turkey, or Iran said anything similar. It's just because Oman has this experience in terms of diplomatic communication between the US and Iran. That's precisely why it was chosen as the place of meeting.
All right, so let's just take stock of the US-Iran dynamic now, because I think that that's the hot topic, at least as far as global media is concerned. Their attention is quite much directed towards this burning issue. And burning, I say, because especially since the start of the year, other than Venezuela, it's, US versus Iran, which has grabbed everybody's attention. And so I think that Donald Trump and his administration, they had upped the ante when they had started showing support for protesters in Iran. And then very recently, just last week, Donald Trump had announced that there was a whole armada, a flotilla, which was just waiting to, enter into clashes with Iran, and Iran had it coming. And Trump has been trying to justify his intended intervention into Iran on two grounds. First of all, he says that because the Iranian regime are extremely cruel to their own people, and so he's coming to Iranians' rescue. And then Donald Trump also says that because Iran wouldn't desist from, stockpiling its uranium enrichment programs and whatnot, and that provides another pretext to the USA for intervention. Now, the thing is that this isn't something which just started in June 2025, isn't something which happened all of a sudden in January 2026. But, Trump administration's extreme hostility towards Iran also goes back to 2018, when I remember that Donald Trump had announced unilaterally to withdraw from the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, under which Iran had agreed with President Obama back in the day that they would give up their nuclear programs, and that in return the USA would lift trade sanctions over Iran. But somehow Trump only increased belligerence from both the sides, actually. I think the hostilities then only increased, and they came to crescendo in January 2020 when General Qasem Soleimani was attacked, and then one after the other, Trump has been targeting Iran. And then in January 2026, what Trump, along with Netanyahu, tried doing was they tried usurping Iranian protesters' voices and their grievances against their regime to the US's own advantage in order to, benefit the US's interventionist, expansionist designs over Iran. Now, do you think that the talks are going to be held tomorrow, I believe, on 6th February in Oman? Do you think there is going to be cooling down of temperatures, or is it only going to get worse?
I think it's going to get worse.
All right.
Because Iran has seized 2 oil tankers now. I'm sure you must have heard that. U.S. President Donald Trump said in an interview to NBC that Khamenei should be very worried now. So I don't see cooling down of tensions between these two countries. And also I think we need to take into account what Israel wants. Because a lot of the things that the U.S. has done in the Middle East is for Israel. And we all know what Netanyahu wants when it comes to Iran. So I think one way or another it's going to happen. I don't think the U.S. Will listen to other stakeholders in this region. Eventually, my understanding is, and this is, I mean, I hope something like this doesn't happen, but I think there will be an attack on Iran. I don't think there's any escaping. Yeah.
So,
because, see, here's the thing, and there are many different angles to that. One is, of course, Israel. Then another one, there's a lot of backlash within the United States when it comes to the Epstein files. I know we're going to talk about the Epstein files as well, but I think to divert attention from the Epstein files, there's another, this is one thing that the U.S. could do right now, because if they, let's say they had decided already that they have to attack Iran. If they do it now, that would, of course, allow them to divert attention from Epstein files to another geopolitical situation unfolding in the Middle East. And I think that gives Donald Trump and his administration some time to figure out how to deal with this backlash. So I think there are multiple angles involved here. No one really knows when the attack is going to happen. But see, I mean, the U.S. has spent hundreds of millions of dollars sending its military to this region right now, aircraft carriers, military personnel, all for nothing? Nah, I don't think so. I think there's going to be something. Otherwise, it reflects really badly on President Donald Trump. He keeps giving these threats. I'm sure you must be following U.S. media and U.S. social media. People have started to call Trump Taco because he backtracks from things that he promises. So similar to Venezuela, I think, yes, there's going to be some sort of action by the U.S. military. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow, maybe after 1 week or after 1 month or even after years, but it's going to
so
happen.
ultimately, what is the US's aim? Do they want to topple the regime? Do they want to get rid of the Islamic
No, I think
Iran?
it's not about toppling the regime. It's about having someone who follows their direction. If Khamenei today says, I'll do what you tell me, I think they will be very happy with Khamenei staying in power.
So why would Khamenei not acquiesce?
Because I think Khamenei has his own interests, and as far as him oppressing the Iranian people is concerned, I think there is a lot of truth in that. I've spoken to many Iranians. I was deployed at the Turkish-Iranian border when I think this was the first week of January, and at the time, of course, there was this anticipation that the U.S. is going to attack Iran. I forgot the exact date. There was this one night in the first half of January when Iran had closed its airspace. There was a lot of military movement in the Gulf. Diplomatic communication between the stakeholders was, coming every hour. Many embassies were warning people to evacuate. And at the time, I think it was almost certain that a strike, an attack from the United States and Iran is imminent. So I went to the Turkish-Iranian border on that night. It was, I think, 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. in the morning here in Istanbul, in Bonn at the time. And we were getting reports that some U.S. Drones have been spotted in the region, and the attack is going to happen in the next hour or two. But something happened, and the attack did not materialize. It was delayed. It was postponed. And later on, we learned that it was due to the mediation of regional countries, and they kind of pushed Donald Trump to stop this attack or at least delay it. But here we are today.
But do you believe that Iran is also going to retaliate if any misadventure is
absolutely, yeah, 100%. 100%. But just wanted to point out one more thing about the Iranian people that I spoke to. So when I was in Bonn, I spoke to many Iranians who regularly cross into Turkey for trade and tourism.
Right.
And I met so many people, and Muneeb, one thing that really stood out for me after speaking to them is that none of them, it doesn't matter if they're pro-government or anti-government, none of them wanted to appear on camera.
What's the reason?
I had to request them. They just don't want to be visible. And I think that really goes to show the societal divide within Iran right now, the social fragmentation. Because I think that's a very important issue and not many people are talking about it. If someone tells me that everyone in Iran hates the Iranian regime, I think that's wrong. If someone tells me that everyone within Iran loves the Iranian regime, that's also wrong.
So what do you think? What kind of?
I don't know if the majority is in support or majority disagrees with the regime. I don't know. I haven't been able to find a credible poll with that regard, but I have to say there's a significant percentage of the society which resents the Iranian regime,
Right.
Khamenei, and all these people. They just don't want him in power anymore.
So I mean, what do you think,
And I think
would the Iranian people be going through, particularly when they're looking at the fact that on the one hand, there's the Iranian regime, which, to put it very mildly, has not been very nice to its own people. There have been reports about thousands of people being found in body bags, dead, and their bodies have been accumulated over a long period of time as the protests had started. And on the other hand, there is Israel, which is a genocidal regime, and there's the United States, and they are trying to gain political point-scoring tools at the cost and at the expense of Iranian people's lived experiences. What does that do to Iranian people, and where does that leave them?
I think you have framed the question in the best possible way. And what I want to say is, all are wrong except the Iranian people. The Iranian regime is bad, US is bad, Israel is bad. And the ones paying the price are the Iranian people. They don't know what's going to happen. I remember asking some people this question, whether or not they support US attack on Iran. And I did find, I think, 2 or 3 voices that told me, yes, the US should do something about it. They should attack Iran, but it should be a precise attack targeting the regime only. No civilian should pay the price for that. And there were some people, in fact, the majority told me, no, we don't want the US to strike Iran, but at the same time, we don't want this regime in power anymore, because Iranians are very resilient people. They don't want any sort of foreign intervention in their country anymore. But when it comes to the solution to the problems they are facing, they just want to be liberated from the hardships, from the economic pain that I think can be blamed on both the Iranian regime and the US government, because the US has been sanctioning the Iranian regime. But even sanctions aside, the Iranian regime has done a pathetic job when it comes to controlling the country, the economy of the country. They haven't been able to, unite their electorate, the masses in the country behind them, and that's why there's a lot of backlash, resentment against them in the society. And so I don't know, Muneeb, what's going to rescue the Iranian people. For sure, I don't think it's going to be Raza Pahlavi.
Right. Absolutely. He doesn't represent them because these people have been living in exile anyway. And so,
I don't know why he's being given so much importance on Western media.
Perhaps because the Western
everyone knows he's a puppet.
Perhaps because the Western superpowers believe that he could be a useful tool for them later on. Perhaps.
Yeah. This is the point. This is the point. They want to install him the way they installed his father.
Right. Right.
So see, with Iran, I think it's one of the most complex stories of our time. I don't know what's the solution, honestly. If the regime goes, can democracy be restored to Iran? I don't know. Because the moment the regime is out, I think we'll see a very, very, very heavy involvement by Israel and the United States.
That's never good news.
When it comes to,
because that was not good news for Libya, was not good news for Iraq, was not good for...
The only possible way out for Iranians, and I doubt it's ever going to happen, is if the regime says, we are going to change our style of governance, let's restore democracy, let's bring democracy, let's hold elections, let's remove this concept of an Ayatollah sitting on top of millions of people and deciding their fate. But again, is he going to do it? The answer is a
don't you think
resounding
that
no. Correct.
the current Iranian president, deep down, Masoud Pezeshkian, is sort of ready to offer
He's one of the moderate
concessions
ones.
to the people of Iran?
He's one of the moderate ones, but in the end, Muneeb, Iran, everything is under the hands of the Ayatollah, the supreme leader. In fact, I don't know if people know this, the IRGC,
Yeah.
it reports to the Iranian supreme leader. Exactly. So,
I mean, that reminds me a lot of Pakistan as well, because you might have politicians or civilian politicians, but ultimately it is said that power is wielded at another level altogether. So I think that this is I think this is a theme that I can sort of identify, and it sounds very relatable because that's what I have been seeing in my own country as well.
But I think, Muneeb, what the difference would be, at least on the surface and when it comes to institutions, there's some autonomy, right? There are elections.
So what's the difference between autonomy and appearance of autonomy? Is it real autonomy or an appearance of autonomy?
I mean, that's something that you could tell me because I haven't been living in Pakistan.
I'd rather not say. I'd rather not say. But yeah, I've thrown in that question, at least for anybody listening to this. I've given them some food for thought. But, let's talk about Donald Trump and his ambitions for winning the Nobel Peace Prize, which he lost to Machado of last year. But, he could always try again. How far do you think he's getting closer, if he's getting at all, to his ultimate aim of being the global peacemaker, because he set fire on his own country with the use of ice, and on the other hand, he's also the aggressive posturing towards Iran, and then relations not having been very good with Caribbean, within the Caribbean, and towards the European Union with his expansionist aims regarding Greenland, all of that on one hand, and then him trying to bring so-called peace to Gaza with the establishment of a new board of peace, and then there are talks going on. Actually, today there have been talks, I believe, in Abu Dhabi between Russian and Ukrainian delegation, and there's Steve Witkoff, the US envoy, and he's trying to mediate between Russia and Ukraine, and they've just agreed upon a prisoner exchange program. So there are some successes as far as Donald Trump's idea of projecting himself as the global peacemaker are concerned, but then there are lots of huge failures as well. So where do you see him in terms of him trying to project himself as the ultimate peacemaker?
I think, when it comes to Donald Trump and peace, it's not black and white. I do think he has played a crucial role in fostering peace in certain parts of the world. But when it comes to, for example, Venezuela, I mean, come on, everyone knows what he did. He literally ordered his forces to enter a sovereign nation, pick up the president when he was sleeping, and bring him to New York. And Gaza, did he do something that led to peace? I think what he did has certainly decreased the intensity of Israeli attacks on Gaza. Has it ended the attacks? No. But if the price is for decreasing the intensity of Israeli attacks on Gaza, then I think Donald Trump should get it. But if the price is for bringing peace to the Palestinians, no, he doesn't deserve it.
Right.
He has not brought peace to the Palestinians. And, the other wars that happened in the world since he returned to the White House, I think, he did play a crucial role in bringing tensions down between some countries. But as far as Nobel Peace Prize is concerned, he really wants it. And I don't know whether or not he's going to get it, especially based on the tension that we're seeing between Iran and the U.S. right now, what he did to Venezuela, and some of his actions.
Because
correct. Some of his
I think that
against
it's happened for the first time in a long, long period, at least, if not in history, that NATO is divided from within now, because they have this pact of collective self-defense. But what is to be done in a situation where one of the NATO members, the leading members of NATO, actually USA, goes rogue against the rest of NATO countries, and where one of the NATO members themselves becomes a threat to the alliance itself? I believe that this is an extremely unprecedented situation, and it's strained relations between NATO and European Union on the one hand, and US on the other.
Yeah. But I think, NATO under Donald Trump was always under a lot of pressure because even during his first term, he was very critical of NATO. And since his return to the White House, he says that he's the one who needs to take the credit for forcing NATO countries to increase their spending to 5%, defense spending to 5% of their GDP. So I think NATO understands that they can't really operate without the United States. That's why Mark Rutte, who's the current Secretary General of NATO, he flatters Donald Trump a lot. In fact, to the point that he called him daddy. Right? He did say that. I mean, I'm not making it up. Mark Rutte did call Donald Trump daddy. And I mean, this is something that all NATO countries have understood. If you want NATO to fulfill its mission, if you want security for NATO countries, you need the United States. And this is something Donald Trump knows he can capitalize on. And that's why he has been doing whatever he wants. Because he knows at some point they will say yes.
Do you believe that what the Canadian Prime Minister just recently said, Canadian Prime Minister Carney,
the World Economic Forum,
and he said
Yeah.
that the international rules-based order has now come to an end, and what we are seeing is an extremely new dynamic, which is unprecedented, especially in the post-World War II era. Do you think that, for example, European countries, European Union countries primarily, and that to Denmark, given its standoff of sorts with Donald Trump, do you think the European Union needs to be more inward-looking, stop relying too much on USA, and needs to come up with their own defense arrangements to protect one another and have each other's backs?
But here's the thing, Muneeb, I don't think they can do that. They can't fight Russia.
Right.
The only country that can fight Russia is the United States. I think we need to acknowledge this.
But I don't think the United States
No
is
matter
ready to
how-
fight with Russia, right? Because they are giving Russia exactly what it needs on a platter. Trump came up with a peace deal vis-a-vis, Ukraine-Russia issue, and he just said that, what, the Donbas region, Crimea, everything that has been under Russia's
Take it.
control or de facto control, or even the lands neighboring Zaporizhia region, give it all to Russia. Don't put up a fight, just give up and surrender. And that is completely opposite to the European Union stance when it comes to what Ukraine should do.
And this is primarily why there's a lot of friction between the EU and Donald Trump right now, because the EU has been backing President Zelensky. Donald Trump does not like Zelensky. It's no secret now. I don't think he likes the way he has been running the country. I don't think he likes the way he has been reacting to the talks that Witkoff is having with Russia. So in terms of EU and US, especially in regards to Ukraine, yes, you're right on point, Muneeb, but there's a huge difference between the two countries. But I think what Donald Trump has on his mind, he just wants the Nobel Peace Prize. That's why he wants Ukraine to do this huge compromise and get done with this war. But under Zelensky, and especially given the sentiments within the Ukrainian society, I don't see how that's going to happen, because I have reported from Ukraine myself, and I remember speaking to a lot of Ukrainians at the time. This was 2022 January, 2023 January, 1 year after the Russian invasion. And I didn't find anyone who told me, you know what, Russia, yes, we're okay with Russia taking our lands. They're not. They say we're going to fight. We're going to resist.
And that puts them at odds with Donald Trump's
That has not changed. That has not changed since. Because see, I went there for the first anniversary of the invasion, and at the time I saw the Ukrainian public is united. They are very critical of Russia and the Russian president. They want the US to do more. But no one told me that they're okay with a compromise. They're fine with a compromise. And I think that sentiment has remained very much similar today. They are still not fine with Ukraine ceding its territory to Russia. So how do you bring about an end to this war? I don't think anyone has answered to this question right now. Unless you put US boots on the ground and get Russia and the US or EU to fight a conventional war against one another, I don't see how it's going to end. Because Ukrainians, yes, they have the capacity to resist as long as they're getting support from the European Union and the US. But the moment that support ends, Ukraine won't be able to resist Russian attacks. The reason why, of course, I have to give it to the resilience of the Ukrainian people to be able to go to the front lines and fight a war against an enemy which is much, much, much stronger than them. And they have been doing that for the past 3 years, right? But they also understand that the moment the US and European Union stop the support and the finances coming into the country, they would be defeated in a week or perhaps even less. So, well, I mean, what I'm trying to say, either this is going to happen or Zelensky is going to compromise or European Union is going to get involved militarily in this war by sending its soldiers, forces, fighter jets, or European Union and the US are going to start to see eye to eye on Ukraine again, just like they were during the Biden administration, and more robust actions will be taken against the Russian administration.
But then that operates as a huge betrayal to the Western Bloc, I believe, because then it's not only the Russia-Ukraine equation. I mean, with respect to Russia and Ukraine dynamics, it's the European Union and Western countries, all the Western allies of the US, they want to take a hardline stance against Russia, and then Trump is refusing.
I think that that's also very true. They want this hardline stance not just because of Ukraine, but also because they have their own strategic interests,
Absolutely.
long-term interests.
So Trump,
If it were only for the Ukrainian people, I don't think the European Union would be, trying to encourage the United States and basically all countries in this world to isolate Russia and the Russian Federation. And so I think that a lot of it has to do
but then
with
Trump is
his long-term
betraying them
strategy.
still on every front because, when I would be reading Western politicians, particularly far-right politicians like Liz Truss, they used to say that it's a litmus test for Western hegemony on the global stage as to whether they can stand up to an aggressive Russia after its invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And when Trump has betrayed its Western allies on that front, and then Trump again threatens the European Union countries for sending troops in Greenland because he has his eyes on Greenland, and then he also attacks the UK, with which it has always had special relationship with regards to the UK's decision to award Chagos Islands, actually return Chagos Islands back to Mauritius. So on all these fronts, and then to hit the nail on the coffin, Trump recently disrespected a lot of the British martyrs who died on the front line while serving in Afghanistan.
And
He
then
offended them.
later he tried to take his statement back and post
he tried damage control, but the damage was already done. So, one after the other, there has been a series of a spate of attacks on, if nothing else, then the sentiments of the US's traditional Western allies. How far do you think the European Union and the US's Western bloc, if they're Western allies, they can cling on to the US for support?
I think they don't have any other option but the US. They have to rely on the US because the moment this alliance between the European Union and the US is broken, Russia is going to capitalize on it.
All right.
I mean, Russians, they have been, I would assume they have been trying their best for something like this to happen. And if it happens, the winner is going to be Russia.
Right. So most of then I think our takeaway is that these Western countries, their leaders, they're beholden to Trump. But then now there is another thing that all these.
Very quickly, I want to add one thing very quickly. Yeah. If they knew that they can live without the US, they can operate, they can function without support from the US. NATO can become stronger without the support of the US. They would have done it. They understand that they cannot function without the US. They need the US. The US doesn't need them. And that's why they say yes to everything Donald Trump says.
So, I think one of the biggest aspects of the US and its Western allies' domination of the world was that they used to claim that they championed the causes of democracy and human rights, and they were going to export these Western values to the uncivilized world. They were going to bestow these blessings of Western civilization on the rest of the world. But now it turns out that those on the moral high ground were never themselves as moral as they pretended to be in the wake of the Epstein files. So now let's have a talk about Epstein files. What is happening and what is going to happen, particularly when very powerful people, and that's the interesting bit, that we've always been told that people like
Yeah.
Donald Trump, they are fascists, they are populists, they have no regard for democracy, they have no morality. He was known as a misogynist whose audio takes had leaked that he was going to grab women by their dash dash dash. But then what happens is that the anti-Trump in Western politics, people like Hillary and Bill Clinton, they are also not just implicated, but found to be at the very center of the Epstein scandal. Now, what do you think is happening and what is going to happen?
I think they're trying damage control right now. They don't know themselves what to do. They're trying their best to control the narrative, but I think it's going to be very, very difficult for them because the truth is out that all this time, all these powerful people had substantial ties with a sex trafficker, with a disgraced human being, and I don't think they know. I don't think they know what to do right now. They'll be trying their best to contain what's coming out of these files. And one thing that I would like to highlight, as someone who works in the media industry as a journalist, why is Western media not highlighting the allegation that Epstein used to work for the Israeli intelligence? Why? I have not seen any Western media network cover this at length because, I mean, come on. There is strong evidence. There's so much strong evidence out there that, he had something to do with the Israeli government. I don't know what, but he had something to do with the Israeli government.
You know what? I just read today Zach Polinsky. So he's the leader of the Green Party and he's a leftist. So he has just put up a post today talking about this organization called Palantir, which is which is a pro-Israel organization. It's a corporation which enters into contracts with governments to provide public services. And so in the UK, NHS services are provided to the public through Palantir. And the thing is that Palantir is a particular organization with which Epstein had very close links, with which Peter Mandelson had very close links, and now Peter Mandelson is...
How?
So now I think that explains why the Western media and mainstream media particularly, they are not reporting on Jeffrey Epstein's Israeli ties. And that adds up. Because there are also corporate interests, political interests, they're all tied up together in a very intricate manner.
Yeah.
And so...
Because maybe, some within Western media are working for the same entity Epstein was working for.
But I think that we first need to decode what Epstein files are about and what this whole scandal is about. I think let's just start from the start. So Jeffrey Epstein, the first time I heard his name was in 2019. He must have been notorious even before that, but I remember summer of 2019, all of a sudden a momentum had started building that there's this really evil person called Jeffrey Epstein and he's in jail and he's done some really bad things and he has been friends with some of the most powerful people. Particularly at that time it was reported he was very close to Donald Trump or Steve Bannon, who happened to be another far right person in the global arena and who was very close to Donald Trump. So these were the people who were very good friends with this sex trafficker, with this convicted child sex trafficker, Jeffrey Epstein. Now that's what I had heard. And then I heard in the summer of 2019 that the same Epstein had killed himself in prison, which I today think is very convenient for those who happen to be the most powerful people in the world. So just a couple of weeks ago, I was reading this book by Virginia Giuffre, Nobody's Girl. And Virginia Giuffre just died a couple of months ago. It hasn't even been years since she died. And this book was published posthumously. It came out after her death, after her suicide. Again, very convenient. And in her book, she details that she was less than 16 years of age and she was working at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. And that's when Ghislaine Maxwell had spotted her. And she thought, yes, we could use her. She could be a good addition to the sex trafficking ring. And Ghislaine Maxwell took Virginia Giuffre to a naked Jeffrey Epstein who was lying on a massage table upside down. And then Ghislaine Maxwell taught Virginia how to give massage effectively to a man. And then Ghislaine took Virginia's hands onto Jeffrey Epstein's private parts. Now, why am I telling this in detail is because this just explains the intensity of the criminality that was going on, that young
Yeah.
girl, and that is what you're exposing her to. And then this same Virginia Giuffre,
He's just one of hundreds
one
of
of
victims.
hundreds of victims, and she has detailed other victims as well. And you know what? She's written that as a victim of the Epstein ring, she herself also used to work in recruiting other vulnerable girls. And just imagine the guilt of these survivors to be gaslit into believing that they themselves are criminals, to be gaslit into believing that they themselves are mini Epsteins. This is the kind of trauma that the victims will never be able to get out of. And then she's also detailed that she was trafficked to Prince Andrew, Prince at that time, and now his prince title has been taken away. And it turns out that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor had been taking out loans from Epstein, and not just Andrew, but even his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson. She had been taking money even for her private travel, even for her foreign vacations. And it goes on and on and on. And then we've also got people like Bill Gates who have been implicated, and we've got people like Noam Chomsky. What I understand is that this
One person that I don't get is Stephen Hawking.
Steven, I mean, I get it, because a lot of people are saying that he was already so frail and he was so weak. How could he have been interested?
He was handicapped.
How could he have been interested in whatever Epstein had on offer? And I said, don't underestimate his prowess, don't underestimate his libido, because he had an affair with another woman whilst he was on wheelchair and he was being looked after by that woman. So I mean, never underestimate people just by the looks of it. And then there's also Lord Mandelson. Now, Lord Mandelson could perhaps bring about the downfall of Sir Keir Starmer's premiership in the UK, which means that as you're talking right now, the UK's Prime Minister might have to resign as early as next week. And it's because even though the UK Prime Minister knew that Peter Mandelson was hands in glove with Epstein for years, even after Epstein was known to be a child sex trafficker, even so, the UK Prime Minister appointed Lord Mandelson as the ambassador of the United Kingdom to the United States. Now, when all these things are coming up, I think that it is going to shake up everything that we know. It is going to, I don't know, perhaps it might end up in Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew, having to testify in court or in the US Congress, something which has never happened before, and it might even bring down the UK Prime Minister's premiership. So do you think that justice and accountability might just be in sight? Because Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton were just recently paraded in the US Congress to give their testimony. Do you think finally we're inching towards the most powerful people in the world, the global ruling elite, being held accountable, finally?
Muneeb, as much as I hate to say this, I don't think we'll ever find the truth. Because of these suspicious suicides that have taken place in this case and the way the DOJ has been trying to redact some documents, they're telling us what they are fine with telling us. When it comes to the reality, I don't think anyone is going to ever find it. There's going to be a lot of question marks going forward about Epstein, what he did, who was he working for, even though we have a sophisticated idea now who might he have been working for. But it's never going to be officially released to the public. The same way we have many question marks about the assassination of former US presidents. So I think, in terms of accountability and truth, for the victims, yes, there might be some sort of progress, but when it comes to full disclosure, I don't think we're ever going to get it. Because, see, we have to learn from the past, learn from the history. Is this the first time something of this sort has happened? No, there have been many instances in the past, and every time something like this comes up, the DOJ and the ones who are in power, they do their best to hide the details that matter. And I think that's what's happening right now as well.
I somehow also have the feeling that Donald Trump is using this for his own political advantage, because he's trying to make people forget his own links with Epstein. What he's done is he has approved, or his administration has approved, the release of pictures showing Bill Clinton in some not very good light. He's lying in a bathtub, has this really young girl sitting on his lap, perhaps she's a child. But then, Donald Trump wants
Mhm.
to forget the fact that he himself had drawn this really vulgar picture on a birthday card for Epstein.
But
Yeah,
to be fair to Donald Trump, everyone knows Donald Trump had such a past. He was a
yeah,
playboy.
absolutely.
But Bill Clinton, he had a different personality,
Even with the
at least when
Lewinsky
it comes to
scandal?
television. I mean, that's for sure. But in terms of his appearance in public, of course, what happened in the White House with this intern, that's something that everyone knows now. But in terms of his personality, he never portrayed himself as a playboy
Right.
who loves to hang out with girls all the time. So Bill Clinton visiting this island and having such a close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, I think it's very surprising as opposed to Donald Trump having a similar relationship, because Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, especially in terms of their liking for girls, uh, there might be some similarities in that. But Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein, in their liking for girls, yes, again, there might be similarities, but the lifestyle was complete opposite.
I think Jeffrey Epstein, yes, very much like Donald Trump, has always been a sleazebag, very much interested in young girls on the younger side, particularly of Russian origin, but not exclusively so. It also turns out I don't understand how come Jeffrey Epstein was so close to Peter Mandelson, who happens to be a gay man. And why did Peter Mandelson write such romantic emails to Jeffrey Epstein? I believe that Epstein was perhaps more fluid than his image. I've come across certain emails in the Epstein files which indicate that Prince Andrew, or the former Prince Andrew, particularly enjoyed having threesomes with Jeffrey Epstein along. So this all sounds extremely pornographic. Yes, this is sleaze fest going on.
But
Absolutely, but I do believe that these people's sexuality was also very, very fluid, and what used to, bind them together was their absolute devotion to the
and
cause.
you're forgetting Bill Gates.
Bill Gates,
Bill Gates is also,
absolutely, and
yeah.
Bill Gates' wife has some very incriminating things to say as well, and also the fact that perhaps
You
he was
know,
carrying STDs.
you know what
Yeah,
I would like to say, and this is something that just came to my mind. For years, for decades, these powerful people, they shat on the global south for some of the pathetic practices that we
thank
have,
you. Yes, yes,
right? Yeah. But just look at them going and having these relationships with underage girls. How is that different from child marriage?
absolutely. And so, what's happened is, I actually want to
But
get onto this
yeah.
topic. So, Western far right media, they had gone mad and berserk, and rightly so. They were completely justified in doing that in relation to the Pakistani grooming gang scandals in the UK, which, when you look at certain
Hmm.
towns like Oldham and Telford and Rotherham and a few more, yes, the grooming gangs which are operating there were run by not South Asian men, but by Pakistani men who identified as Muslims, agreed. But then what happened was the GB News and Talk TV and Sky News Australia, all these kinds of channels, they said all Muslim immigrants are like this because this is what their culture is about and this is the culture that they bring to our countries. Okay, if this is what these people were saying, now by the same token, how come that they are completely mum about a culture not just of impunity but absolute debauchery, promiscuity that was going on within the top levels of the global ruling
The
elite?
topmost level, I mean,
So now, is that
people who
also,
basically run
should we say that this was
the
Western
global world
culture?
order.
Is this Western culture?
Yeah. I mean, I think you have raised a very good point, and this is something that needs to be talked about at length, because for decades, Muneeb, the West has shat on the global South for some of the
Stigmatized us.
pathetic practices that I pointed out. Yeah, yeah. But did they look at the mirror? I mean, you saw these powerful people come on camera and highlight how, we are, the thinking within our societies is backward, we don't know what we are doing. And at the same time, they were the ones who were engaging in similar practices, but no
And
one
it's
knew.
not just one Jeffrey Epstein. There was the Jimmy Savile controversy as well, the Jimmy Savile scandal. And then there was Harvey Weinstein as well. And all these people are interconnected, by the way. And now what happens is that the same Western far right, which kept saying that they want to protect women and children in their countries from Muslim immigrants, from Pakistani grooming gangs.
Yeah.
Okay, the sentiment is absolutely right. And those Pakistani grooming gangs are disgraceful. I totally agree. How come that under their very watch, many members of their own far-right alliance, people like Steve Bannon, people like Elon Musk, people like Donald Trump, they were all, and Alan Dershowitz, all of these people were hands in glove. They were hands in glove with Jeffrey Epstein in victimizing vulnerable girls, in victimizing vulnerable children. And not only that, have you seen another trend that a lot of these people that I've named, Clintons, Tony Blair, Peter Mandelson, Alan Dershowitz, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, have you noticed that they've always cheered on Israel in relation to what Israel was doing in Gaza very recently, after October 2023 in particular? Do you see a connection there?
I mean, as I said, the moment you brought up this topic, why are people in the media not talking about this relationship, which is becoming increasingly visible between the Israeli state and Jeffrey Epstein? Why? I think this is where we'll find many of the answers to the questions that you and I have. I think this needs to be investigated. And, to begin with, Muneeb, how the hell did he establish such strong connections with these powerful people? I understand he was a rich person, but there's many rich people in this world. There are many other billionaires, millionaires. But how come he had the answer, the connection for everything?
I think he tapped into all these people's insatiable appetite for lust and sex, and I think that's what bound them, because as I've been saying, it was absolute debauchery, promiscuity, and this was something, the commonality which brought even Clinton and Trump together. If they could not come together on the political stage, then they were able to come together in this particular mission of victimizing young girls, the girl child, and that was exactly what the attention was directed towards, and that's what bound them. That's how I see it.
I mean, you're right on point. And, I think we just need to closely follow how this story unfolds from this point onwards, because I think every day we'll be hearing
something new,
some disturbing details about this case. But let's just hope that justice is served and people are held accountable. Because right now, based on what I'm seeing happen in the world, I don't have that faith. I think people are going to get away with what they did in this Epstein case. Because, like Mark Carney, he pointed out, the rules-based international system is done, is gone. And I think he's right. But is he the first person to say this, Muneeb? No. People in the global south have been saying this for decades. But these people were not listening to them. They were silent. But now they're the ones who are the victim. So now they're raising their voices.
And even that took so many years.
I think it's not about global rules-based international order coming to an end. I think it has completely collapsed. For example, when I look at what's happening in the world right now and the way people are able to get away with horrific, heinous crimes, I ask myself, is there anything called international law left anymore? And I think right now, based on what I have covered and seen, the answer to that is a resounding no. I think international law doesn't exist anymore. We would like for it to exist, yes, for sure, but it doesn't exist. People get away with anything they want. Look at what happened to Gaza. They talk about the Gaza Peace Board. Where are the Palestinians? Why are the Palestinians not involved in deciding
people
what
like
is the
Tony
future
Blair
for them?
are involved, for goodness sake.
Exactly.
Same person
Someone
who brought destruction
who's
to
a war
Iraq.
criminal. Yes. Look at Venezuela, for example. I'm not a fan of Maduro, but the way things unfolded within Venezuela, it was against international law. There's no thing within the UN Charter or international law that could justify U.S. actions against Venezuela. But people are fine with it.
I think
people are fine with Gaza. People are fine with whatever Western countries are trying to do.
I think it's because when people like Donald Trump say that international law does not bind him, but it's his own morality, which I don't think he has any of it. That is what dictates what he is going to do and what his steps will be, not just internally within the United States, but actually vis-a-vis the rest of the world as well. Do you think, and that's my last question to you for today, do you think that we are moving towards a much more destructive phase than we've ever seen before? And or do you think that 2026 is going to be turned out to be a year of conflict and discord and lots more tensions than we've seen in the past year, which is saying something actually?
I think, yeah, it's going to get worse, Muneeb. I don't want to sound pessimistic. I'm not a pessimistic person. People who know me know that I have an optimistic outlook about the world. But the past 3 to 4 years, they have been heavy, if that makes sense. They've been very heavy. And what I have seen consistent in all the events that I have covered, major wars, geopolitical tensions, there was no such thing as justice or international law involved in them. I am powerful, I'm going to get away with it. This is what was happening, and this is what's happening right now in the stories that we are seeing unfold even today. So I think this is going to continue, and in terms of new conflicts, I hope we don't see any new conflict, but I think this US-Iran story is going to develop further. And with the US midterm elections approaching, we might see some other interesting developments within the United States. But, I just hope that people, especially the ones who are leading major nations in the world right now, they realize that they need to restore this faith that we, me and you, the general population, should have in the international rule-based system. Because right now, if you ask anyone, I can tell you, Muneeb, if you ask anyone in this world if they have faith in the United Nations, international rules-based order, they would tell you no, we don't. And I think that's a very, very dangerous moment for the world that we live in today.
I think not. Yeah,
Because if there is no faith in international law, international systems, international institutions, we are basically turning the world, the global village that we live in, into a banana republic of sorts. There's no
banana
rule.
world order.
People didn't get. Yeah, banana world order, exactly. I think, yeah.
And I think
I don't know
it
if that
directly
makes
reflects
sense.
what's also going on internally in countries, right? What's been going on in Iran, protesters are being shut down. And then even the USA, where the ICE has been on an onslaught against its own people just in January.
Yeah,
Renee Nicole Good.
we wanted to talk about ICE,
Yeah,
right?
Renee Nicole
So
Good was shot in the
Minneapolis, for
face, and then
example,
Alex Pretty as well. And these are American privileged, relatively white citizens, and they have been shot by their own law enforcement agencies. That kind of culture of impunity then also reflects in the Trump administration's, I think, foreign policy.
I agree 100% because with ICE in Minneapolis, just think about it. It's a city which has 600 police officers. Guess how many federal agents Donald Trump deployed there? Close to 3,000, or perhaps even more. 3,000 federal agents for a city with 600 police officers. Was this a strategic policy move? No. These agents were there for another purpose. And I don't think Donald Trump has achieved that purpose. It has been a disaster for the Trump administration. Finally, he has realized it. That's why he has pulled some of the agents out. He has even, sent Tom Homan there.
Yeah, I just read that today.
But this whole situation, and I think the damage that the Minneapolis incident inflicted on the American people, I think it's going to be an extremely difficult task for not just the current U.S. administration, but the ones to come after Donald Trump to repair. Because it's something that has shown to the world that America is very much similar to other countries in the region where dictators are in power.
Right. So despotic, totalitarian, fascist regimes which were associated with, Middle Eastern countries, with Arab states. Now,
Yeah.
finally, you're seeing a glimpse of it, and that too on steroids. Not just a glimpse, I think, a much larger version of it in the United States. I think it's really
Yeah.
changed our perception of what reality is like, particularly in today's day and age.
Because when I saw those protests and the way the federal agents were trying to contain them, I had a hard time believing that this is something that's happening in the United
Pepper
States.
spray, tear gas.
Especially given the fact most of the protesters were white people. Because if it's a black person or a Muslim immigrant,
That much is
I would
expected.
understand. America has a history.
Yeah.
America has a history of
George Floyd.
oppressing certain minorities and certain people, certain ethnicities. But when I saw this happening to white people, I was like, no, this is something else. Now, the America that we know has gone to another level when it comes to its policies, the way it treats its population. I just hope that Trump is able to contain this damage and restore some faith that the American people should have in his government.
I mean, let's hope so, but doesn't seem likely. But thanks a lot for your time.
Unless
I think this was a very detailed conversation. I don't think anyone else has had such a detailed conversation as much as we have.
Thanks very much for having me, Muneeb, and I think I really enjoyed chatting with you. And good luck with your YouTube channel. I think you are doing a great job, and just good luck with it.
Thank-
And I hope the audience likes what we discussed.
Thank you.